thank everyone for coming, and Betsy for organizing all these great lunch and learns. As I told her and the ladies I invited today, I had this great idea in the bathtub one night. I was like, hey, let's interview some of the ladies that made me feel welcome when I came to the club, so that our new members can get an idea of what we're all about and what we want to be about in the future. So, first of all, I'd like to introduce Judy Aydelott. And Phoebe Garfield. Yvonne Robinson. And where's my Joan Hannah?
Here she comes.
Oh, and right Joan Hannah. Oh, grand entrance, as usual. Very good. So, Yvonne, that microphone's on. I'm gonna first.
A hot mic.
I'm gonna start with on this end.
Oh, okay.
And you can spray the microphone in between with some can of Lysol. We're being very COVID.
Don't get electrocuted.
Yeah. No, just spray the cloth and then. Oh, let's see. I'm going to introduce them each briefly. I've had a free interview with them to learn about some things that I didn't already know. So I hope that I can get into some things that you don't know about them. Judy was a Franconia transplant, and she and her husband Pete moved their young family to purchase a radio station, WLTX, after being in the Waterville Valley area for many years. The radio station is in Littleton.
LTN.
Oh, LTN, sorry. And Phoebe Garfield also moved her family to life in New Hampshire from Newton Center to follow her husband Doug's dream of living in the North Country, and when he purchased the Littleton Courier in Littleton. Both Judy and Phoebe had active careers in both companies, and I hope that you get to hear all about some of those competitions between advertising dollars and the friendship that grew through their work. Yvonne Robinson came to New Hampshire after her love of being born in New York, moving to Britain for a little while, that I hope we hear about, and her life in San Francisco, when she met her husband Lou, and they had a house up here and started a life all together up here, coming in the summers. Yvonne's warm and caring nature is something that we all treasure here, and I hope that she gets into talking about how she was one of the most amazing homemakers in taking in two girls and adopting them, as well as raising her own. Joan Hannah is the only local of the bunch. Born and raised in Franconia, Joan dedicated her family, her life to her family, all along the way. Even while doing that, she was a champion skier, an Olympian, a farmer. She is now a golfer, a potter, and a gardener. Or still a farmer, I guess you could say.
No, it doesn't leave. You can't take the farmer out of it.
That's right. Joan can also trace her lineage to 1900 AD. And there's some amazing people in her lineage.
Wow.
So what I'll do now is I'm going to stick with Judy, because she's got the microphone. And I'm going to sit down, because I'm a little nervous. And I'm just going to ask some questions that may prompt her to talk about something that she either talked to me about already, or something that pops into your head. Whatever you want to talk about. No censoring, no swearing. There is a baby here somewhere. And children. I tend to swear, so I'll begin. So Judy, one of the things that I was fascinated about is your sporting life as a young girl, and the special thing that you did with your dad. And I'd like you to start with what your interests were growing up in sports and others, and what the special time was with your dad that made you a weather buff.
Well, I am the classic tomboy. I had dolls, but I much preferred trucks and balls and bats and tennis rackets and eventually golf clubs. But my parents were absolutely fabulous. I mean, here I was in the, and I was, you know, it started in the 40s and in early 50s, and girls were not welcomed on sports fields and teams at the time. I wanted to play Little League Baseball, but rule number 13 said no girls, so they let me pitch for their practices. My mother also wanted to do everything my father did, so I followed her example. She became a pilot, she was a fisherman, a hunter, she did everything he did, and so I naturally picked this up. My father started flying in the late 20s, and he flew up until just before the war, which is quite expensive. The fuel was expensive, so he didn't fly as much, but he was part of the Civil Air Patrol. And so I kind of grew up in a plane, and I eventually got my license when I was 16 years old, and I used to fly all around northeastern Pennsylvania where I grew up. And one really fun memory I was talking to Delia about is I was in my best friend's wedding in Rochester, New York, and I was in northeastern Pennsylvania, and it was a long car ride. So I would hop in the plane and I would fly up for all these wedding parties, and believe me, this was a great way to meet guys. I mean, I was never a lack for a suitor. Every time I went, they said, I want to meet the lady pilot. So that was kind of fun. And I haven't flown since I was married, but I have many wonderful memories. I had lots of sports. I played a lot of tennis. I had one interesting experience when I was a junior in high school. My coach decided that I could play in the boys' tennis team. And now think about this, 1959. Women were to be seen and not heard, and not playing on the tennis team. So I have many memories. One would play Valley Forge Military Academy, and afterwards I would always change in the nurse's office because they had no place for me to change. And then usually we'd go in and have dinner with all the other players. And Valley Forge wouldn't let me in their dining room. So my coach had to take me to whatever McDonald's was at that time. So that's just an example of what I did.
And she's also profile golf champion 15 times in a row. As well as probably tennis too, but you're my golf idol, so I like bringing that stuff up. Tell us about how you met Pete and the unusual circumstance around that.
Okay. I went to Colby College, and when I graduated, I wanted to be a guidance counselor, but in order to be a guidance counselor, you had to teach for 2 years. So I was in northeastern Pennsylvania teaching, and I did my practice teaching there. So in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, I had this one student in my class. And if you've ever heard anyone filibuster a word problem, it was Bill Aydelott. Bill was 16 at the time. I was driving to Elk Mountain to go skiing one night. And he said, "Miss Bassett, you're not married, are you?" I said, "No, Bill." He said, "Well, I've got 2 brothers." And I'm thinking, 16 years old, 2 brothers, no way. And then he started describing them. And his older brother Pete had graduated from Cornell, and tucked and was working at General Foods. And he wasn't married, and I was doing 80 by then. And lo and behold, Bill set it up. He set up the first date and went with us. We went skiing at Elk Mountain, and then the day went on. I went to his parents' house for a dinner party and the whole thing, but that started, and we were married less than a year later.
Okay, I want you and Bibi to both get into some of your career competitions. I think because of the newspaper and the radio station, Bibi's now 91. I think she's trying to outlive Judy, so I think she's probably going to live to be 110. So let me see. I had one other thing I wanted to ask you, Judy. I know that you were most proud of an achievement that you have had being the well, you were Colby Alumni President. You received their award. What was it called?
The Colby Brick Award.
The Colby Brick Award for all her work that she did to organize a directory that year, and you had the biggest turnout ever or something.
Well, it was for our 25th and 50th reunions. We broke a lot of records because the first time in